We're speaking with Harihara Mohapatra, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Clean Network, a trade group working to support, unify, and grow the decentralized clean energy sector in India, with a focus on improving energy access for the rural and urban poor. Prior to joining Clean, Mr. Mohapatra spent a decade working in microfinance and financial inclusion. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Will.
So India is starting to really emerge as a leader globally in renewable energy, and part of that is the effort to provide full electrification to the country. So I'm curious, how would you briefly describe the state of energy access currently in India, as well as the role that decentralized renewable energy is playing?
Energy access and energy security are basic needs of any household in any country to support their livelihoods, health, and education related services. In India, even though there has been a focus on electricity access and present government is pushing for rural infrastructure and electricity infrastructure, as per the government data, there are some 43 million and more households which are yet to be electrified. Another 400 million plus households are underserved with electricity access, but they are unreliable and under quality. Now, the pace at which government is moving to provide the grid services to households is around 2 lakh households per month. And at this rate, it is a long journey for the government to reach all the households who are yet to be electrified. Therefore, the DRE space has a great contribution to make in terms of energy access to the poor. The DRE space, where close to about 150 to 200 active players are there in India, providing both electricity as well as clean cooking services. They are present there, right there on the ground, providing the last mile connectivity with a rate which is affordable and with various technologies that are suitable to particular geographies. Now, Clean has got almost 50% of those numbers as its members, and they are all in that space, striving to better serve those unserved and underserved households. However, this DRE space requires a lot more recognition so that it can provide better services. Even though at the government level, there are a lot of efforts to recognize and to mainstream this sector. I would say, the mini grid policy that is being drafted and the off-grid scheme that was provided and supported by the MNRE. So these are some of the key policy measures that were taken out by the government. But I understand that it requires far more recognition and consensus among all these policymakers to recognize DRE as a mainstream service provider and not as a provider which is once in a while or whenever there is exceptional circumstances as mentioned in the national electricity policy.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. So you talk about last mile electrification, and that has been a problem in India for decades, as you mentioned. You also say that, I think that the DRE sector can address that problem quite naturally, quickly, cost effectively, in a flexible way. In terms of the policies and regulations that would help scale the DRE sector more quickly, what would be some of let's say the top three things that the government could do from a policy perspective to achieve the full potential of the DRE sector?
Okay, so the DRE sector is facing multiple challenges and primarily boils down to the policy recognition. Because once there is a policy recognition to the DRE space, this will lead to a lot of provisions that will help this sector to grow fast. So definitely one thing that requires in the DRE sector is the policy recognition itself as a sector that complements to the grid electrification. So that is the top priority, which will perhaps lead to a confidence among the financiers to provide low cost debt access to DRE players, especially the small players in different remote geographies. So that is the second thing that we would require is access to finance, different financial instruments, but specifically the low-cost debt. And the third thing could be a greater resource which should be made available for research and development in improving different applications towards livelihood, towards health, towards agriculture and education, clean cooking, etc. So these are the three things I would say are the topmost that will help the sector to achieve its full potential.
Great. And you mentioned the relationship between the centralized grid and decentralized solutions. How does Clean and your members view that relationship in India? I think India is a unique case, and I'm just curious, how do you see those two parallel approaches coming together?
Okay, so we see DRE playing a more complementary role in this, so that these units are providing services as ESCOs, and perhaps these units are required to be recognized as maybe subsidiaries of the DISCOMs or maybe franchises of these DISCOMs, so that there is no duplication of effort by the DISCOMs itself in terms of putting parallel lines or creating those infrastructures. But these ESCOs can be recognized as subsidiaries, and those last mile connectivity can be achieved through these ESCOs. So as far as specific role for these ESCOs are concerned, definitely these units can play a role in providing energy access to difficult geographies where DISCOM is not finding it viable or maybe profitable business, and they are not reaching there. So that is where DRE can provide that service. Other than these geographies, wherever grid is already there, but it is primarily focused on household connection, DRE solutions can provide a complementary role, especially in the peak load hours to the commercial units also. And the third thing that the DRE sector can play a role in is to support the livelihood and different applications which are like health and education and SME related applications, also for the community service centers. So these are certain things that the DRE certainly can play a role in.
Mm-hmm. So the government think tank Niti Aayog recently issued its draft national energy policy that looks ahead to, I think, the year 2040. In that document, Niti Aayog says that there are still 304 million unelectrified Indians, by the way. Would you say that the NEP, the National Energy Policy, is a positive development for the DRE sector? And what would you like to see improved in the NEP?
Well, this is definitely a very positive movement. The objective of the National Energy Policy is to serve as a vision and guiding document for the energy ecosystem. This is a futuristic provision that we are seeing. It has got positive reflections for addressing different economic sectors, their energy demands. It talks about energy efficiency, but at the same time, it only focuses on the centralized grid. And as far as the DRE is concerned, it has said DRE will be resorted to only in exceptional circumstances. So that is the issue that NEP has got. So what we have proposed to the Niti Aayog in terms of our comments from Clean is it should be technology agnostic. It should provide for a space where every kind of innovations and technology should be given a space to provide energy and play a role in that. We have asked for financial and policy support. There should be definitely recognition for the DRE, and financial instruments should be made available to all DRE players, including the smaller ones. There should be enough provision for R&D resources so that constant innovation and research and development should take place. So these are some of the comments that we made to the Niti Aayog. Basically, we said that there should be equal access to everyone at an affordable price. So that is the comment from Clean.
Yeah. So Besides the national energy policy, India also recently introduced a general sales tax, a GST. What are the views of Clean on what that GST will, how it will impact the DRE sector more broadly? Will it be positive or negative?
Well, the goods and services tax (GST) is one of the biggest tax reforms in India in recent times, and the basic objective behind that is to simplify the indirect tax regime and provide input tax credit to all the taxpayers. Now, this clearly means this will have a positive impact on the entire economy, including the DRE players. So, how they are going to be benefited is through the simplifying process and also availing the input tax credit. Now, if we take that input tax credit, all our DRE players, even if they are putting a GST rate of 5% on most of the RE products, it will not have any negative impact. Rather, in cases, may have a positive impact on the entire sector, except for the clean cooking sector, where the clean cook stoves, which are now at a GST rate of 12%, they may find slightly on a negative side, because pre-GST era, the clean cook stoves were either charged at a 5% VAT, or in most of the states it was completely exempted. Now, post GST, once there is a 12% tax, the clean cook stove manufacturers and even traders will find themselves negatively impacted, and perhaps that impact will be passed on to the rural poor households using those clean cook stoves. So that is how this entire clean cooking sector is going to be negatively impacted. As far as clean is concerned, we have taken up this cause with the government of India. We have made representations to them, and also to help our members to better understand the entire GST issue and how to cope with that. We have undertaken a couple of consultations and workshops with our members. We have used a GST consultant and developed a GST calculator so that they can actually find out the prices and the impacts on them. And we are also in the process of developing a booklet on the entire GST issue. So this is how Clean is committed, and in the time to come, wherever there are lack of clarity, we are going to get engaged with the GST Council to make those things clarified. Thank you.
Interesting. So you mentioned clean cooking as well as electricity access. Electricity access is not just an issue in India. I mean, there are more than 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa who lack electricity access as well. There's a lot of innovation happening in India in the DRE space, and I'm just wondering from Clean's perspective, as the body representing the DRE sector in India, how can India help the rest of the world, in particular sub-Saharan Africa, scale energy access? What are the things that where India can play the biggest role there?
Okay, in India we have a large number of facilitators in the energy access field. They include the DRE providers, the infrastructure in itself, which is very large, which includes the rural electrification infrastructure by the government. We have got think tanks, academics, we have got financiers who are supporting this. We also have got networks like Clean. So we have got a whole spectrum of agencies and institutions who are working in this energy access story. So we have a lot to, of course, help and provide inputs to these African brothers and friends, especially in terms of the knowledge that we have got and a lot of R&D support that can be provided, which India has witnessed to. Therefore, the story of the growth that India has witnessed and the decentralized renewable energy provision that we have seen in the last decades, this can once provided and disseminated to them, can actually help them to leapfrog the grid.
Yeah, I think that'll be a really positive message for our listeners in Africa. So hopefully there'll be more opportunity for Clean to work with partners there. Harihara, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to staying in touch with Clean and seeing the great leadership that you're taking in India flourish and achieve great success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I look forward to your support and cooperation in the future also.